By now, I'm sure you have all heard the news. You watched the videos and you have seen the tier lists. Yuzuha has completely taken over the game as the premium dedicated support specifically for anomaly teams, which have been dominating the ZZZ metagame for a good while now. That said, in this video I want to explain to you why I will be skipping Yuzuha despite her being such a good character, because I do believe that there are many factors that make her less desirable for an account, despite all the great value that she does bring. And so I will be approaching the contents of this video not with the intent to dissuade any of you from pulling for Yuzuha, but more so why it might be the better choice for my account to not get her. And so with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. So Yuzuha is the newest agent in Zenless Zone 0, and she's just a silly little goober that likes to prank people but has a kind heart and goes out of her way to help others. She has a really cool and refreshing design with those smug expressions and fluid animations, and honestly I love her duo dynamic with Alice. And I must say her EP is an absolute joy, true Hoyoverse cinema moment. She's a fun character that is likely not going to be plot relevant, but is so adorable in her own mischievous ways that we can't help but root for her. She really reminds me of Hu Tao, which was my favorite character to play back in the olden days of Genshin Impact. In addition to that, Yuzuha is releasing alongside her unique summer outfit, and I gotta admit, out of all the skins they released so far in Zenless Zone 0, I think this one takes the cake. Pun intended. I love all the small details they included in the skin, like the water gun she's holding, the rubber ducks along the swimsuit and umbrella, the sunglasses, and even the heart stamp on her face. But of course, the real highlight is the fact that the raccoon gets a different outfit as well. It's just an all-around fun, colorful, and flattering summer skin, so if I were to get Yuzuha, I would honestly feel compelled, if not outright obligated, to buy that skin. Now this is where Yuzuha actually shines and brings a lot of value to your account, as if you look into her kit, there's really a lot of benefits that she is going to provide. She's got a 1200 attack buff that lasts for 40 seconds, so you can pretty much ensure that you always have it active with a 100% uptime on the buff. Now that is not what's so good about Yuzuha as a character, as characters like Soukaku can also provide a 1200 attack buff. Yuzuha also grants a 15% damage buff to those affected by her attack buff, so again you pretty much always have this 15% damage buff active, and on top of that up to a 20% anomaly damage and disorder damage increase, though if I understand it right it's more likely going to be around 15% as it depends on her anomaly mastery stats. She's also got some off-field attacks with her Tanuki that allow her to deal damage and build some anomaly effects faster. And a very nice effect that I think not a lot of people know about is the fact that Yuzuha does not contribute towards the disorder damage. So the way that the disorder works is it basically splits the disorder damage between the characters that contributed towards triggering the effect. And if you have someone like Yuzuha, that will naturally have a much lower anomaly proficiency compared to actual anomaly agents, she would normally be effectively nerfing the disorder damage by just participating in building it because of her lower stats. Thankfully the game goes out of its way to not count Yuzuha into the equation, allowing you to deal quite a bit more damage from the disorder triggers as a result. And again, these disorder damage procs will be increased, and all of these benefits you can pretty much get by just using her EX special and her ultimate. She's got this very simple and easy to use kit, just this fire and let go playstyle much like you do with Astra, where you can basically just rely on her EX special and ultimate and she will be able to still provide you with a ton of value. Now she's also got a unique parry, not too different from what Yixuan has, where if you hold down the basic attack button you can parry an attack. And I believe there's even a few shortcuts that you can do to allow the parry to come out a little bit quicker, and sadly despite how well animated her basic attack strings are, there's no real benefit to actually using them. In fact, you'll just be losing out on some damage if you spend more time than you need to with Yuzuha, as again her buffs are just so powerful that you should be spending more time with the other characters enjoying the buffs. Yuzuha enables anomaly teams to an extent that is unlike anything else in the game. She is the cornerstone of all anomaly teams going forward, and you can practically view this as the damage over time teams of ZZZ. That is to say say they are a very unique type of characters that are going to have a lot of synergy with each other, much like the dot teams in Honkai Star Rail, where they work very well together, but outside of that team they don't have as much effect. And of course Yuzuha is going to be remaining the staple of those teams for a very long time. At least I'm assuming that's going to be the case. Additionally, she's also got a very good benefit, that is, she has some very good free-to-play friendly W engine options. You can take the Kaboom the Cannon W engine, that is the Lucy signature, or the Weeping Cradle aka Rina's signature W engines, and they're all going to work very well, allowing you to naturally save up on some pulls for future characters or to potentially chase after some mindscapes. Once again, she has a very solid kit that provides these valuable buffs that can't really be found anywhere else, and as a lot of people have been saying in the community, also have the benefit of freeing up your Astro Yao, allowing you to use her on a different team. So now you end up with these two very powerful buffing characters that are going to act as a powerhouse of a support, and you have a lot more freedom when it comes to team composition. But that is where I think we need to be hitting the brakes a little bit and put a stop in all of this Yuzuha glaze, as I do have some criticisms regarding this character, and before I talk about those criticisms, I do need to address a couple of things such as pull value and what to expect from the future. But of course, one of the big things about gacha games that we always need to take into account when talking about pulling for a character is the fact that these gacha games are essentially resource management games. You need to allocate your resources correctly to make sure that your account is good enough so that you are able to clear the endgame content and receive all of the rewards that they have available. Or at least ideally that is something that you want to do as you pull for characters that you enjoy. And so we need to look towards the future and the characters that are going to be released in the later updates of Zenless Zone Zero, how they are going to be changing the metagame of ZZZ and how they are going to interact or not interact with Yuzuha. And so I will quickly run through some of them that we know for a fact will be coming very soon to the game, as I believe this is a very important discussion point in this video. Starting with Orphe and Magus, which I believe was initially named Orpheus, the cool pair from the Obol squad that I expect to be some kind of fire main DPS, potentially even our second Rupture character in the game. Now this is all speculation of course, but given the importance that she has seemingly been given in the past, with a trailer highlighting the pair along with Seed and everything, if I were a gambler, which I am, I'd bet that she's going to be a pretty powerful character and a fun character to play with. Hopefully she has some cool unique mechanics like we have seen being the case with characters like Hugo, Evelyn, and now Yixuan, and perhaps she'll even be on the same power level as someone like Yixuan or even Miyabi. And especially given the fact that they show up in the story of the recent updates, I feel like there is a very good chance that they're going to be the next limited character to show up. After Alice, that is, of course. And at least from a visual perspective, I honestly don't see how Orphe would be an anomaly character, at least she doesn't look like one for me personally, so she would not benefit from having Yuzuha on her team. Now a character that would likely benefit Orphe and Magus would be Seed, the huge hulking robot from the Obol squad that again has been teased for a good while now with the 2.0 update trailer, and given their stature I do believe that Seed will eventually end up being something like a stunner or a defender, as that seems to be the logic that they are going with most ZZZ characters. The taller, more muscular and larger characters tend to take these two roles, so I would expect Seed to be the same, even though there's a lot of speculation as to who Seed might be, and there's a big rumor going around in the community that it might just be a little girl inside Seed that is operating the robot. Either way, I am a huge fan of Seed's design as I am with Orphe and Magus. I have been very excited for their arrival ever since I got a look at their design, so once again that is yet another character that I may want to pull for in the future that is straying away from the anomaly path, and given the way that the metas tend to work, there's a good chance that we might be moving away from the anomaly meta and moving more towards an attacker or rupture meta. Now another character that I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to, myself included, is Komano Monado, another member of the Spook Shack faction along with Yuzuha. It's the big tall furry man that a lot of people are in love with, and for good reason, as his design is pretty cool, and in the 2.1 story update we do get to see some of his attack animations as he is able to help you out on the quest, much like Lighter was able to in the past, and by the looks of it he seems to be a fire agent, though we do not yet know which role he is going to take. Now given what I said before about Seed, I think that there is a very high possibility that he is going to be a fire stun agent, if not then potentially a fire defender agent, though I am leaning much more towards Komano being a stunner. But the problem with that is of course the fact that we just had some very powerful fire stun banners be released very recently in the form of Jufufu and again Lighter, so it feels kind of redundant to be pulling on essentially the same archetype of character. So unless Komano Manato ends up being an A rank agent, which is still in the air, we still don't know if he's going to be an S rank or an A rank agent, that is going to be a big factor on whether or not I will be getting him on my account. But then of course we also have to take into account the Virtual Idols faction. Not much is known about these three characters, though they have finally been officially acknowledged by Hoyoverse by tweeting a cool animation in a fan art contest about these three, and honestly I love their designs. Especially the girl with the black and pink hair, she kind of gives me these Pantheon stalking vibes for a character design, and I think that's pretty cool. And apparently by taking a look at her concept art, it looks like she's going to be a type of character that can switch between her human form and her robot form, and I think that would make for a very cool gimmick. So safe to say I do want to save some summons for those agents, and we don't really know how they are going to work later down the road, because who knows, honestly they might be anomaly agents, they might be attackers, or for all I know they might be rupture characters. So once again I have a lot more characters coming into the game that I want to pull for, and it's hard to say how much Yuzuha will be able to help my account. Now Yuzuha will be able to help me out a lot if I were to pull for Alice, which is of course the new upcoming agent that is going to be released right after Yuzuha's banner finishes. But the problem with that, however, is that Alice is going to be a physical anomaly agent, and me of course being someone that thanks Hoyoverse for inventing women every day, I have pulled for Jane Doe and I have her on my account, and of course she is also a physical anomaly agent. So there is pretty much a perfect overlap between the two characters, and naturally Alice is going to come out on top. She's going to be the better character, despite how cute and adorable her design is, especially when taking into account her special summer skin. You know, I'm a big fan of the heterochromia, her adorable and shy demeanor, and I'm also a huge fan of the fact that she uses a fencing sword, as I've always been a huge fan of the duelist character archetype that wields a rapier. Speaking of which, I've been very lucky with that this year, as I have had the joy to be blessed with two amazing duelist rapier characters, and as much as I want to pull for Alice, the fact that she's going to completely replace Jane Doe and is effectively going to make her entirely irrelevant, it's kind of going to make me feel like I've wasted all of those summons for Jane Doe, which is a character that I deeply enjoy playing and looking at, so ultimately I will be skipping Alice as well. And that takes me to my next point, which is the fact that I have also skipped quite a few characters, which is going to influence the decisions that I make. Because you see, I missed out on summoning for Yanagi and Caesar, Trigger and Soldier Anby, and finally Yixuan and Jufufu. You see, the last agent that I summoned in ZZZ was in version 1.5, and it was none other than my beloved Evelyn Chevalier. I actually got quite lucky there and managed to win the 50-50, thank god, and the stray cat didn't show up, and as a result I also got her W engine very early on. By now I have basically been saving up polychromes for the last 5 months, and as a result I am now a proud owner of almost 300 summons, and I probably could have gotten a few more if I hadn't missed out on a couple of events. All of that to say that I have enough summons to guarantee Yuzuha. In fact, I'm 80 pulls deep into PD right now, so I may just be able to get Yuzuha in just 10 pulls, assuming I get lucky and win the 50-50. Though truth be told, if I were a gambler, which I am, I'd view every pull as a 50-50 because you either get the character or you don't. But again, it all goes back to the topic of resource allocation and the future characters that I'm planning to save for, as well as how good my current account actually is. Because at the end of the day, if you're playing the characters that you already enjoy and you are able to beat all of the endgame content, that is what truly matters the most. A very cool thing about Zenless Zone Zero is the fact that, besides not having a stupid amount of power creep in the game, Honkai Star Rail, because this is an action game and you take control of every character that you play, you're able to optimize all of your combos, perform swap cancels, dodge and parry any incoming attack, and as a result you're still going to be able to clear a lot of the endgame content despite not having a top tier team. And that takes me to the current teams that I have currently been using in Zenless Zone Zero to clear all of the endgame content, and how much they would benefit or not benefit from having Yuzuha on them. Now, as I said before, the fact that Yuzuha is going to essentially act as a secondary Astra, allowing you to save Astra for another team, is going to allow you to certainly have an easier time, especially in Shiyu defense where you only need 2 teams, but also naturally in Deadly Assault where you need 3 different teams, so having 2 top tier supports is going to make a lot more difference. After all, we don't have an unlimited amount of characters we can use, and not being able to repeat these characters in different teams is part of the reason why they want to push you towards getting these more powerful characters in their limited banners. This is a gacha game after all, they want you to spend money on the game. So that said, let's now take a look at some of my best teams and how I use them. Starting with naturally the top tier character that is Miyabi. I actually have quite a few different teams that I'm able to play with Miyabi that gives me a lot more flexibility than I otherwise would have, and truth be told, she is the reason why I'm able to clear so much content this easily. So with Miyabi I have the option of going the Sons of Koleda route by having Lighter and Lucy on the team, or potentially going more into the Anomaly route by having Bernice and Lucy, or Bernice and Astra instead. Alternatively, I can simply go into the Mono Ice teams by having Miyabi with Lycaon and Soukaku, and if I don't go for the Mono Ice team with Miyabi, and there is a boss that is weak to ice, I can also opt to go for the Mono Ice team with Ellen Jo, which I also got at the very beginning of the game. A lot of people have been bad-mouthing Ellen Jo in the community, but after the buffs and the rework she received, she's a lot better, and she still works quite well, especially in the Mono Ice team. So in those instances where I have Lighter and Astra available to play with, I can then take out my Evelyn team, where I go Evelyn, Lighter, and Astra. But if I want to save Astra for another team, I can instead replace her with Lucy. And this is honestly my favorite team, Evelyn, Lighter, and Astra. It's super dynamic and fluid, and Evelyn is just my favorite character to play with, so there would be some value in having Yuzuha in the fact that I would be able to add her to some of the Miyabi teams or some other Anomaly teams, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, when there is an enemy that is weak to physical, or I get bonuses for Anomaly Mastery, I always have the old reliable Jane Doe and Bernice combo that I can opt to have Lucy or Astra as the support. Now, naturally, this being a double Anomaly team, this is where I would add Yuzuha if I were together, but moving on from then, we then have my Ether teams. A lot of you may know this from the beginning of the game. I pulled Yixuan very early on, and I actually got lucky and got her first Mindscape, which makes her a really powerful character. I would honestly put her in tier 0 along with Miyabi and Yixuan if you have Yixuan at Mindscape 1, because it totally makes her so much more powerful. And for the Yixuan teams, I will have Qingyi as my stunner, and then Nicole or Astra, depending on what I have available, as the dedicated support. And thankfully Nicole is a powerhouse of a 4-star character, or I should say of an A-rank agent. She is so much better than a lot of S-rank agents that are available in the game, and her value cannot be understated. So I honestly don't feel bad about using Nicole with my Ether teams, and if for example the Idols faction characters end up becoming Ether characters, I will likely also use Nicole on that team, because that is how good she is. Getting crit rate, defense shred, increased damage through her W engine, she is just a powerhouse of a character. So yeah, if you take a look at the tier list, you might see that this team would maybe not be so good, but it often ends up overperforming some of my other teams. And lastly, I have my electric team, which is Haramusa, Qingyi, and Rina. Very center team, though I don't use it as much because my Haramusa isn't very well built, and so isn't my Rina, so I only really take it out whenever there is a team that is weak to electric, which is something that I'm currently lacking. I need Hoyoverse to release a cool electric agent that I'm looking forward to, as that currently is my biggest weakness. But all of this to say that, as you can see from my teams, I still have some very powerful teams that are quite competent and allow me to clear the endgame and always obtain all of the rewards since the start of the game. I may have missed some events, but I have never missed the Shiyu defense or Deadly Assault, and I always got all of the rewards. And I plan on continuing to do the same, though I may just not have Yuzuha with me to help me. Again, I have nothing against her, I think she is an adorable character, and I would be lying if I were to tell you that part of me does want to pull her. It's just that it's not such a good idea when I'm able to do so well, and I expect the game to be moving away from anomalies for the time being. But let me know what you all think, as I'm sure a lot of you may be thinking that this is a huge mistake. So quick update guys, I finally played the 2.1 content, and there's this part where essentially you go on a date with Jane Doe, and you know what, I've been neglecting this rat girl for far too long. I may not have her W engine or any of her mindscapes, but at least I can make a team with her and Bernice, and you know who would be perfect for that team? That's right, it's that damned mischievous child again. So I'm sorry guys, scrap everything I said in this video, I might be pulling for Hu Tao's little sister after all.